Trying to get into running totals in Power BI? Let's go. Okay, so here we are in Power BI, and let's take a look at some sample sales data. Have some here, got this from an online data set. It's a fairly representative sample that hopefully we'll be able to use to demonstrate some stuff with running totals. Now, one of the things that we do need to figure out here is the order date. So that's in US format. So let's go and transform. So what we want to do here is we want to make this a date time because it is, and we want to go via locale as well. So let's change this to date time, and we're going to go to English US, and hopefully that gives us date time there. Cool. Think everything else looks good. All right, let's close and apply that. So I think we have something like 1,000 or so. 2,000, great. 3,000 almost. And so let's just take a quick look at some of the columns we have here. So we have order date, and sales is actually our total, and all sorts of other stuff about customers, etc. So this is a fairly flattened data set, but representative to give us a way to get some running totals going. So what is a running total? Well, essentially, rather than just giving yourself a count, so let's just really quickly show this, right? So if I wanted to show a count of orders across the board, then if I then say, let's go by something that's unique. What have we got here? Do we have an order number? Well, we have an order line number. Okay, well, let's go by the number of orders. So we don't want the sum. What we want is the count. And as you can see there, well, that just gives us a number, right? We don't actually get anything happening by time. So even if I put this now by time, so by order date, what you'll find is you just get, whatever happened on each date. You don't actually get your total rising over time. And that's the classic sales type chart that you'll see is, either by order numbers or by, I guess, the sum of the revenue or what's coming in. So you've got a couple of different ways to do running totals. And I guess the important thing is that you need a number to be able to go off, and you need to be able to plot that against the date. So the good news is that it's not terribly difficult to do this. And so if we want to look at, say, the number of orders over time, what we can do is take each order and effectively count them. Now, in order to count all the orders, it's actually useful to add another column. And here, all I'm going to do is add a column called, let's call it total or order count. And let's just make that a literal value 1. Okay, so let's OK that. And now we'll see that that is 1 across the board. So if we just look at this data, no prizes for guessing, that's just going to be 1 all the way along. But what that allows us to do is now do something fairly simple. And we're going to say with our order count, right click here, and let's do a quick measure. Okay, quick measure. And that brings up this rather useful little dialogue here. And what we're going to do is scroll down to running total. Now, you can also do this just with DAX here as a measure. And the difference between a measure and a column here is a measure is able to operate on data outside of the current row. It can operate on data from anywhere and sum and aggregate and do all sorts of cool things. Whereas just a column on the table is really restricted to working within the context of that row. So let's go with the running total. And so what we're going to do is sum the order count. So if you think about it, what we'll be doing is saying, give us the sum of all of those rows, because we have one per row. That's our order count per row. And here we're going to say that our order date is what we want to segment that by. And let's make that ascending, fine. And so this running count is now going to be order count running total. And so what we can see here is that what it's actually doing is summing the order count, and it's filtering by all the selected data for the order date. So if you filter your order date, then it will filter that, and we can maybe show that, is on or after the order date that's selected, which is actually the minimum. And then so it's essentially saying give me the range or the count within that range, or sorry, the sum within that range. And some of this is dynamic depending on what you have selected. So let's just change this now to say, okay, so we still have our order date as what we want to segment this by, but now let's actually put our order count running total in here. And as you can see, that now actually counts up over time. So again, let's just put a little card in here just to show what our order count was. So we can sum the order count. So that 2,823, and that's what we've got. Oops, right at the top there. Yep. Okay, so we've sort of validated that. Let's remove that one. So that is all fine, and we'll say that's for order count. Now, what about if we want to do via sales total? Okay, so let's do something similar here. But now we don't actually need to create another column because we already have the sales. So let's just take a look at the sales column down here. And now we're going to do another quick measure. Oh, actually, the quick measure is already out here. So what we're going to do is go via sum of sales, sum of sales. And again, we're going to do this via order date. And so if I add that now, we'll have the sales running total. Okay. So let's do this slightly differently here. Let's add the sales running total. We're actually going to do two things here. So we're going to add the order date as the x-axis, which is fine. And let's add that without the hierarchy. We're going to add sales as the y-axis here, so we can see every day what's going on. And now let's take our running total as the line y-axis, and we can see over time this is actually our sum of all of the sales. So this is going up into the millions, and each of these sales individually is less than 140K. So just a little bit of a quick reconciliation in our heads here. We can see, yeah, that's plausible, right? That all of these individually will add up to 10 million. So that's great. But as you can see, this is fairly granular. And also, this isn't particularly easy to see here. So typically, what people may do, and there's two reasons why you may do this, is actually make your date less granular, say down to the month level. Now, the reasons you might do this, one, for clarity, but two, it's actually quicker to render and actually to calculate within Power BI. So I had a report the other day that actually was churning away for minutes to actually render a visual with daily data because, it really was very variable. I had, say, 20 or 30 events every day. And then when you start to put relationships to other tables that have maybe got thousands of rows, actually churning through all of that data to calculate these measures, per row, essentially, became really quite unwieldy for Power BI. But as soon as you actually make your order date monthly, you've effectively crunched down the number of permutations that it's actually got to calculate. So let's just do that, and we'll see a little bit of a difference in what these visuals maybe look like. So it'll look more or less the same shape, but it'll probably be a little bit easier to visualize. So let's just copy and paste that, because we want to essentially show the same thing, but this time let's actually take our order date, and we'll do something nice and simple here by duplicating that. And so we'll actually go back to our query, and we're going to duplicate this column. So order date, copy, but we're going to call this start of month. And we're going to go to transform, and on the date, there's actually some really nice little things here where you can say, okay, just make this the start of the month. You can make this quarterly or yearly or whatever you want here. But this is a very easy way to sort of, in a non-destructive manner, just add different ways to segment your data in the same table. So now, we've got monthly data, which allows us to aggregate that. Okay, so nothing's changed yet because we haven't changed any of this other stuff. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to create another quick measure off the sales, right? So we have sum of sales, but now we're going to create one off order date start of month. And we're going to add that. And let's do a similar one just for the order count as well. So sum of order count, and we'll do that off the start of month as well. Okay, so now let's just change this up. So this second visual here, we're now going to look at the sales. Get rid of this, sum of sales, order date again. That's great, but we're going to say, instead of order date, we're going to make this order date start of month. And you can already see that is starting to look a lot more useful. But of course, now we've got a conflict here because this particular running total here is still using the order date rather than the start of month. So we just need to change this to be this one. Oops. And I need to move that back to being start of day. And so now, start of month. So now you can see that this is a less bumpy line, and this is also showing now. These scales don't particularly work, that well together, because now it's showing. It's now showing all on the same scale, but hopefully you can see that this is a lot easier to read, and probably much less heavy on processing. Okay, so just for completeness, let's go and make these very similar to the other page. And what we'll do is move these down to be the lines. And we'll add our counts back in here. So really what we want to do here is take the count of order number in our y-axis here. But we need that to be a distinct count. And over here again, order number, distinct count. And so what you can actually start to see here is the correlation really between this jump at these points, and you can see a jump in the running total as well. So again, slightly clearer way to see things when you actually have less data. So aggregation is good. So one more thing just to take a look at here. Let's just take a look at the performance analyzer just to see, even with this small amount of data, whether or not there's actually any difference in these two visuals. So actually, let's just change the title of this so it's a little bit easier to see. So let's just call this bad and good. And let's just see how that works if we start recording and then we just refresh these visuals, right? So let's just do this a number of times. So the more granular data you can see, this is in the milliseconds, but imagine how this will get much more so, with a lot more data. So, our bad is always more than our good, right? So, double in many cases. And yeah, let's just check that with the sales total as well. Let's clear this. And so sum of sales, actually, let's just change these again. Change our title. Bad and good. And let's clear and refresh these. Again, you can see pretty much consistently Power BI is doing less work with that second visual. And again, this is all the same data, all the same table, but it's actually just based on what we're targeting in those visuals in terms of the measures that are actually being calculated. So worth knowing that performance, and just being able to see this here with more recent versions of Power BI, it's actually really quite cool now, the performance analyzer. So just another thing to add to your tool belt. Hope that's helpful. See you next time.